Last weekend, Mahoney and I went out on a dinner and movie date, and we watched the film Creed, which is the seventh installment in the Rocky franchise. Ever since, I've been wanting to put together a quick movie review, mostly to share my perspectives and see how they relate to others. So, this is not the review you should watch if you haven't seen the film yet and are worried about having spoilers, because I don't know what I'm going to say and there very well could be spoilers. I'll start off by conceding that I'm a fan of the Rocky movies. I have been since I was very young. This is me and my little family with the original Apollo Creed from Rocky 1 through 4. Of course, his character dies at the fist of Ivan Drago in Rocky 4, Dolph Lundgren's character. But yeah, this is me and Mahoney and Justine and Haley, our niece Haley, with Carl Weathers. The first Rocky movie that I saw was Rocky 3 when I was maybe 11, 12 years old, something in that area. And I remember my dad bought us some Everlast boxing gloves. Me and my brother bought us some boxing gloves and some mouth guards. And so everyone was going to see Rocky. And we began hosting boxing matches with all the neighborhood kids on our front lawn. And we had the equipment for it. I think we might have even just shared mouth guards. They just might have passed around. We didn't really care much back then about that kind of stuff. But yeah, we were very into it. And since then, there hasn't been a Rocky movie that's come out that I haven't seen in the theater. And of course, I caught up on Rockies 1 and 2, shortly after seeing Rocky 3. In fact, I think they were kind of playing them on TV at that time, to hype up the movie. So I saw them. I really liked Rocky 1 and 2, and I really liked the recent installment, what you might consider Rocky 6, which is the Rocky Balboa movie. And so I was waiting for Creed to come out. I was excited for Creed as soon as I found out that it was coming. And actually, in terms of movies for the winter, it was at the top of my list. It was equal, if not greater, in importance for me to want to see this movie as Star Wars. I'm also a big Star Wars fan. So, yeah, I was excited to see it. And at the first opportunity, I did. Took Mahoney. We went to go see it. Mahoney became a Rockies fan just recently after we saw Rocky Balboa in the theater. Before that, she didn't really care for the Rocky movies, but that one was so moving to her that she kind of fell in love with the character. So she was interested in seeing Creed too, but not nearly as much as I was. Anyway, I'm going to go through some of the plot and my thoughts about Creed, the movie. It's all going to be intermixed. And so, yeah, this is the point where spoilers are going to perhaps start. So, Creed, the title of this movie, comes from this man who is in real life Michael B. Jordan, standing next to Sylvester Stallone. But in the movie, this is Adonis Creed, a.k.a. Donnie Johnson, who is Apollo Creed's illegitimate son. Apollo had an affair. Donnie is a result of that affair, and he grew up without his mom. He grew up in foster homes and in juvenile detention. And when we catch up to him in the movie at the beginning, or toward the beginning of the movie, he is in a juvenile detention facility, pretty much like a kid's prison, and he's getting in troubles for starting fights. And this is where Marianne, Apollo Creed's real legitimate wife, comes into the picture. She tracks him down at this detention facility and makes a proposal. She wants to take him home and raise him because he's Apollo's son. And she's willing to overlook the fact that it's the son of an extramarital affair. He's still part of Apollo, and she doesn't have Apollo anymore. So she wants to take him in, and he agrees. So she raises him to be a fine young man. He has a business job with a nice urban, cosmopolitan firm. He's wearing a suit all day long. But on the weekends, he's running off to Mexico and fighting in boxing matches and winning. And it's just his own self-trained, growing up tough and fighting all the time. And of course, some of this we assume is because, we know who his father was, right? And he's got this in his blood, basically, is the message here. So he's just a born fighter. And ultimately, he decides he's going to quit the business side of things. It's tough for him to break this to Marianne, but he wants to quit and go into boxing full time because he thinks he can do something with it. And he wants to make it on his own. He wants to start his own reputation, so he's going as Donnie Johnson. Of course, Marianne is really upset about this. She doesn't want to see him go down that path. She doesn't want to see him getting beat up, getting disabled, getting killed like her husband. But she can't stop him. So he first approaches a renowned boxing gym in Los Angeles. They refuse to take him on. They think he's a joke. So he packs up and travels to Philadelphia, hoping to track down Rocky Balboa, Apollo's one-time nemesis and later friend and ally. And he wants Rocky to train him. And at this point, the movie turns into like a really classic. It reminded me a lot of like one of the old Buddhist stories or Zen stories about a potential disciple or apprentice approaching the master, asking to become the student, and the master's like, no, I'm not doing that, not into that, that's not my world anymore, done with that, go away. Which is basically what Rocky does. But Donnie says, okay, but I'm going to be at Mickey's gym tomorrow. So he starts going to Mickey's gym anyway. He gets an apartment, and soon, he's training at Mickey's gym, and soon he starts kind of having this little attraction to the woman downstairs from him, Bianca, who's a singer, who listens to her music really loud and disturbs him because he's trying to train. And first he's upset at her, but then, after he sees her for the first time, he's like blown away. And then after he hears her in a nightclub singing, he's even more blown away. And this is his love interest. And so this love interest starts to grow. Same time, he continues to, approach Rocky, going back, and ultimately Rocky agrees. Okay, like he's showing up at Rocky's restaurant when he's unloading trucks, and Donnie's like taking over and helping unload and all this kind of stuff, and he's calling Rocky like uncle. He's trying to get in his good graces, and ultimately this wears Rocky down, and he says, all right, I'll teach you a couple of things. Next thing you know, Rocky's showing up at Mickey's gym, and he's starting to work with the guy. And he's like, all right, I'm going to do this, but you're going to have to work really hard. And when the agreement's in place, then we see, then we start into a training montage, and Rocky's giving him the old school stuff. And this is what, a lot of us love about Rocky is, it goes back to that, like Rocky IV, when you see the 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 polarity between Ivan Drago and his high tech training and steroids and all this, and Rocky out, running mountains and lifting logs and all this stuff. So he puts Adonis out to, catch chickens, and when he's going to take him to the club, the actual training area where he's going to train him, which, I should rewind a step. Once it's clear that Rocky's training Adonis, Donnie, then one of the guys in Mickey's gym, one of the trainers, sees this and says he wants to put his fighter up against him, right? So he's got a fight coming. Rocky doesn't really want the fight right away, but Donnie's like, hey, what are we doing this for, right? It's for fighting. So all right, so reluctantly, Rocky's, okay, but we can't train in the same gym with him. We have to go somewhere else. So Rocky takes him to a gym, a really kind of urban, nuts and bolts gym, old heavy bags, dark room, old trainers, all old school stuff. And when he first takes him to that gym, they leave from Rocky's place, Rocky's apartment, and he just basically tells Donnie, don't get in the van. You got to run. Just try to keep up. And it's a long way to the gym. It turns out to be quite a long way to the gym. So all of this kind of like outdoors running, doing pull-ups and, chasing chickens and this and that. The classic Rocky outdoor training style, low budget, old school. So he trains up. We get the kind of the training montage build up for this fight, and then he goes in, fights, wins a fight, but it's discovered right before the fight by the other trainer that this is Apollo Creed's son. The other trainer goes and looks into it, finds it, oh yeah, this guy's been boxing down in Mexico, and this is Apollo Creed's son, and he wants to come out with it, but Rocky, asks him not to. Ultimately, though, it comes out, right? It comes out in the press that Apollo Creed's son has had a fight. He's won the fight, and now it's attracting other people. And I think it's the light heavyweight champion of the world in the movie. I can't remember what his title. He's a champion, world champion. I think it's light heavyweight. But this is a guy from Liverpool who is a bad boy, and he's getting sent to prison. But he's got a few months before his, like 6 months or something before he has to go to prison. So he wants one last fight, and he decides this is the fight he wants. He wants to fight against Apollo Creed's boy. But he wants it to be, he doesn't want this Donnie Johnson thing. If they're going to fight, he wants to fight a Creed. So the name Creed has to be out there, right? Adonis Creed. So Donnie agrees, right? He agrees he's going to fight. Now he's got to really start training because this is going to be a serious fight. So we get a whole nother training montage. And this is where a little something wonky happens in the movie that I thought, I don't know about this. And that is that Donnie, who's living right above Bianca and developing this relationship with her in the apartment complex, and they're dating and they're starting to, be together. All of a sudden, Donnie makes the proposal to Rocky, hey, I'll come and live at your place. If you want to do it old school, I'll come and live at your place and sleep there, and we'll train right from there. I find this a little bit hard to believe, understand it, and understand his enthusiasm for the training and all of that. But I also know that a young guy just developing a relationship, like if Rocky would have suggested it, then yeah, I could see it happening. But for Adonis himself to be like, hey, why don't I go sleep at your house when I've got this woman who I'm with right here living with me, and we're developing this relationship and I'm in love. It doesn't make sense for a young guy motivated by a love interest to go running off to live with his older trainer somewhere else, unless the older trainer suggested it. But Rocky agrees, reluctantly agrees, and we get a little bit of Rocky humor and stuff in there because he's reluctant. And well, I won't talk about the actual joke that's played off here. But it's one of those kind of Rocky things where a Rocky joke. It's funny, right? The kind of joke a Rocky character would tell. As they start training, though, Rocky has a spell of something happens to him. They're training one night, and he's kind of gets dizzy, he throws up, and then he's falling over, he's collapsing. Goes to the doctor, finds out privately that he has cancer, and he decides to try to hide it. Donnie sees the materials that the doctor gives him to read. I mean, he basically tells the doctor, that's okay. I don't want to go through treatment. I saw what it did to my wife, Adrian. I don't want to do that. Didn't help her. I don't think it'll help me. I'm okay with it. I don't really have anybody in the world anymore anyway. Adrian's gone. His buddy Paulie, who's Adrian's brother, is gone. His buddy Apollo's gone. A lot of the people that were dear and at heart to Rocky are gone. Even his own son moved across the continent to somewhere in Washington State, basically so he wouldn't be under the shadow of his dad anymore. So Rocky's got nobody that's dear to him. He doesn't mind it if he's got a death sentence. But when Adonis finds out that this is what's going on with Rocky, he gets upset. He thinks Rocky should do something, go into treatment. And they kind of have a little spat. And this becomes like a predictable thing. I think they did. I don't think they needed I don't think they needed the illness thing to bring them together, but they threw the illness thing in. It kind of was a little bit reminded me a little bit too much of the old trainer getting sick and is going to die. It's just such a classic kind of a story, and it played out. We saw with Mick in Rocky 3. I don't think we needed it. They put it in there, and everything about it became predictable, and the resolution ended up being just what you think it would be, right? What do you think it would be? Of course, the agreement ends up being, I'm going to fight if you fight. I'm going to be able to fight if you fight. So Rocky agrees to fight the cancer. He starts going through the chemotherapy. Training is happening right in the hospital room and all this jazz, and they're both fighting, right? One guy's fighting for his life. The other guy's fighting for his identity. And this brings them together, and they're both kind of guys who need each other, need a relationship to become themselves again, right? Or to become themselves ever for the first time in the case of Mr. Creed, but for Rocky to feel like Rocky again. And we see a lot of Rocky's, usual character in here, the kind of the aspects of Rocky that we love. We see him, verbalizing his inner dialogue like he does. It's a beautiful thing. It's a thing that causes us to be in love with Rocky, me at least, to be endeared to Rocky. And then the fight comes, the big fight. And the big fight is a little bit predictable too. It is basically Rocky 1 all over again, right? The big name, superstar, champion, world champion versus the relatively no name, nobody thinks has a chance, but he's got a famous dad. This kind of thing brings the fight together. It's not exactly the Rocky 1, but the outcome is, right? The kid goes the distance. That's the whole thing. Taking the punishment, dishing out some punishment, going the whole distance, and losing the fight, but by a split decision, right? Just like Rocky 1. So, and I realized in watching the fight, and I talked about this with Mahoney afterward too, and she felt the same way. that even in the fight, the big fight, there wasn't the same kind of thing that we normally have in a Rocky movie with a Rocky fight. The fight scene was great. It was done, beautifully. All of the fights in the movie were done beautifully. But it's the character, right? And we become so endeared to Rocky's character um, because of his like simplicity and his kind heart and this kind of a thing that brings us to this character. And we don't really feel the same about Donnie. I mean, Donnie's a good guy and everything. We see that. He's had it tough. He's sculpting his own identity. I mean, all the good pieces are there, but he's not Rocky, right? He's not Rocky, and so the feeling that we have about Rocky in the fight is different than the feeling we have about Donnie in the fight. And there's just an element missing there. That element of more extreme kind of empathy with the character. I guess something's missing there in the fight because of the identification with the character. Not even the identification with him, but just our commitment to the character. And this is why I believe that, I heard Sylvester Stallone say Creed is not a Rocky movie. Creed is next generation. And, no. Creed is Rocky 7. That's what Creed really is. And if you take the Rocky out of it, and just have it be Creed, like if Rocky wasn't involved and this was just a movie about Apollo Creed's son alone, his story, and Rocky's not part of it, it's not going to be what it is, right? I'd have probably still gone and seen it, but we love Rocky, right? And so I think, Sylvester Stallone thinks he can step out of the picture now and let the franchise run with a new generation. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we need Rocky to make these films. Rocky's the beautiful character that we love. It's great that we're bringing in Adonis. I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more boxing stories with Adonis and Rocky. Rocky as the manager. I'm going to see that movie if it's happening. But I'm not so. If it's Adonis by himself, I'm waiting for it to come out on video, or I'm pirating it or something. I could download the movie and check it out. And it better be good, or I probably won't watch the next one. I don't know. I'll probably watch them all anyway. But I won't be as in love with it as I am when Rocky's there. So, so you got to keep Rocky. You got to keep Rocky. Sly, if you ever come across this video, you got to keep Rocky. The movie ends in a classic way on the stairs going up to the art museum in Philadelphia, the Rocky stairs. Rocky's just making it up to the top because he's so worn out from being sick and stuff. But yeah, we got a new champion, or not a new champion, but he's gonna be, because the other guy's going to prison. And the other guy readily admits Adonis is the next generation of that division. So that is my review of Rocky 7, Creed. I think it's worth seeing for sure in the theater. On a rating of, well, we can't really do 1 to 10 because there's only 7 Rockies, but on a rating of 1 to 7, I give Creed, I think, a 4. I put it above Rocky 3, Rocky 4, Rocky 5. Yeah, that's what I get. I position it number 4 in the levels of awesomeness of Rocky movies. Again,